Hello, all. How y'all doing? Hope everybody's doing good today. If it's today or you're watching on the replay, I always give it a few minutes to let people get the notification and come on in. And what I can be doing on the side is going to get that document so we can read together. So let's see. Which I finally did something I told myself I was going to do, and I put it on my community tab, which I have to find. I want to go to my channel. There we go. Community tab. There we go. All right. Dun, dun. All right, let's share that. Hey, Susan. Hi, Irish Mart. Aaron. Ooh, all kinds of popping in. All right, let's see. We did it. Every time I have to remember how I did it. Why do I have Disney up? All right. Okay. So I'm going to take my face out of it completely when we start reading. I got to figure out how I can read along but still see the chat. That's the one thing I've got to figure out how to do. That's okay, Pizza, or I should say David. That's okay. I appreciate anybody that comes in for this for even a few minutes. Like I said, we're getting close to being done. I still mark where we're at. So we had started part 2. We're close. Let's see. The glossary starts here. So, that can't be right. Uh-oh. I may have to figure out where we're at because I did not put the card in the correct place. We haven't read that yet. Hi, Brian. I'm trying to figure out where we ended last time. This is going to be fun. I should have. I'm looking through the book, even though I've got the document up. To kind of. Okay, let's go to the beginning. Holy, I forgot this chapter was that long. Jeez Louise. I haven't read. Okay, here's the beginning. Let's see. We read the tone scale, I believe. I remember talking about if the patient does not work well with repeater technique. Nope, I don't think we read that. When I brought this document up, don't look at the document. I'm scrolling really fast to get down to where we need to be. Because we're around 4:30. Oh, the pages don't match. That's going to be fun. I'll have to figure out a way to mark. I need to download this document so that I can make changes. I'm going to do that when we go off today. I know we read all that. I think we were right around there. I think. Emotion and pain shutoffs. Exterior telepathy. Parental living conditions. The engram alleviation. Oh, this is going to be fun. I don't know why. I have this bookmark Tone scale and reduction of engrams. If the patient does not work well with repeater technique, single word. Words as well as engrams exist in chains. There is always a first time for the recording of each word in a person's life. That does not sound familiar. You know what? Even if we're skipping a little bit, I'm not that worried about it. You guys were here. Some of you were here last time. Does this sound familiar to you? Single word technique. 2 happy facts exist, however, to reduce the auditor's labors. First, the dramatis personae of his engrams are at this date aberrated. Yeah, that does not sound familiar. We'll start there. Oh, I haven't been on YouTube at all today. Matter of fact, I took a nap. What's going on? It's been 6 minutes. I gotta get started, y'all. All right. Changing glasses again. Oh. Okay. Yeah. It's sad to see anybody go through what he did. And that's difficult. I watched my mom go through something similar. Okay. Let me get rid of me and see if I can find where we were at. So we're in part 2. Look away and I'll let you know when I'm done. Let's see. I think I'm past. Because this really looks like somebody just typed this in. Okay, I think I read that. There's no rhyme or reason to the page numbers because there's only 275 pages, but there's like 500 pages in the book. So, and there's no headers or anything. I think I'm too far, actually. Oh my gosh. This is so... No, I've read that. Okay, here we go. Part 1. Okay. We did part 1. We're in part 2. Yeah, I'll write down the page number we're on this particular program, and then I'll know next time where to go. Yeah, these all look familiar for sure. My finger's getting tired. Oh my goodness. There we go. All right, so now I need to go to single word technique. We talked about the tone scale. There we go. We're there. Single word technique. All right. I figured out last time, if I don't use my scroll wheel and I use my touch screen, I can scroll a whole lot easier. All right, let's go. Words as well as engrams exist in chains. There is always a first time for the recording of each word in a person's life. The whole common language may lie within the engram bank. The possible combinations of that common language may well approach infinity. The ways various deniers, bouncers, et al. Can be phrased are always beyond count. 2 happy facts exist, however, to reduce the auditor's labors. First, the dramatis personae of his engrams are at this date aberrated. Each aberree has standard dramatizations, which he repeats over and over in restimulative situations. The reaction, for instance, of the father to the mother is repetitious. If he utters a set of phrases in one engramic situation, he will utter it in subsequent similar situations. Let me look at this. It's starting to feel too familiar. No, I don't think so. If the mother, for example, has an accusative attitude toward the father, then that attitude will be expressed in certain terms, and these terms will appear in engram after engram. The second fact is that where the father or mother is abusive to the other will eventually begin to suffer contagion of aberration and will repeat the other's phrases. In a firstborn child where parental brutality is present, one can observe the parents through the engrams of the patient and see one or the other gradually take up the other's phrases, either to worry about themselves or to redeliver them. All this tends to make the engrams appear in chains of incidents. Each incident, much like the next, when one has the basic on each type of chain, the subsequent incidents on the chain are sufficiently similar to permit many incidents to be reduced or erased immediately after the first is found. The first incident on the chain, the basic for that chain, holds the others more or less in place and out of sight. Therefore, the basic of the chain is the goal. Okay, scrolling. Each word in the bank can be discovered to have been delivered to the bank for the first time. Words also reduce in chains when with the virtue that each subsequent appearance of the word in the bank locates automatically a new engram, which of course is reduced or erased as soon as it is contacted or as soon as its basic can be located. Sometimes I get what they're saying, what he's saying, and I don't wholly get what he's saying. Single word technique is very valuable and useful. It is a special kind of repeater technique. On most patients, the repetition by themselves of one word will cause the associated words to suggest themselves. Thus, one asks the patient to repeat and return on the word forget. He starts repeating the word forget and shortly has an associated set of words, making a phrase such as, "You can never forget me." Here we have a phrase in an engram, and the remainder of the engram can then be run. Give me just a second, you guys. I hope I'm not rereading any portion of this. I just want to look a little bit more ahead. Make sure. Yeah, we did read this. Because I read off all the words. There's a few dozen. Okay, I read that. Sorry, guys. I am going over. Okay. Special classes of commands. Deniers, holders, bouncers, grouper, misdirector. I think I did all that. Did we get that far? I think we stopped at like the groupers. Let me come over to the chat. You have thoughts, kind of. Yeah, I know, Brian. I know, me too. You know what? I'm just gonna skip all it is words that they're talking about. I keep looking at the screen and showing you guys stuff, not realizing I'm not on the screen. So I think I'm just gonna, it's just words. And we don't care enough to, it's just what words are holders, what words are bouncers. Don't care. I'm gonna skip that. Differences. There are two axioms about mind function with which the auditor should be familiar. All right, let's just go there. All right. I'll scroll. I'm scrolling, so until I find that. Differences. Yeah, because this is all the words that I went over, and we had done some of it. Because it's not like we're ever going to do this again, so we don't need to know those words. All right. Differences. And I forget, am I saying axiom right? I hope. Like I said, there's words I read a lot, but never use in conversation. There are two axioms about mind function with which the auditor should be familiar. Number one, the mind perceives, poses, and resolves problems relating to survival. Two, the analytical mind computes in differences. The reactive mind computes in identities. Okay, the mind perceives, resolves problem. That's just basic human thoughts. Everybody has survival modes. The analytical mind computes in differences. The reactive mind computes in identities. That's your subconscious. Weird. Okay. Scrolling. The first axiom is of interest to the auditor in his work because with it he can clearly establish whether or not he is confronting a rational reaction. The 7-year-old girl who shudders because a man's kisses her is not computing. She is reacting to an engram since at 7 she should see nothing wrong. Now, how can you have a prenatal issue with that? Is what he's saying there. I'm going to go to all departures from optimum rationality are useful in locating engrams. All unreasonable fears and so forth are grist to the auditor's mill. The auditor with the above law should study as well the equation of the optimum solution. Ugh. Any departure from optimum is suspect. While he cares little about aberrations, at times a case will stall or seem to have no engrams. He then can observe the conduct of his patient and his patient's reactions to life in order to gain data. The second law is Dianetics, contribution to logic. Wow, a sentence that really doesn't make that much sense. The second law is Dianetics' contribution to logic. In the philosophic text, this is more fully entered. Aristotle's pendulum and his two-valued logic were abandoned not because of any dislike of Aristotle, but because broader yardsticks were needed. One of these yardsticks was the spectrum principle, whereby gradations from 0 to infinity and infinity to infinity were used, and absolutes were considered utterly unobtainable for scientific purposes. In the second axiom, the mind can be conceived to recognize differences very broadly and accurately in its nearest approach to complete rationality, and then, as it falls away from rationality, to perceive less and less difference until at last it achieves a near approach to utter inability to compute any difference in time, space, or thought, and so can be considered, completely insane. When this follows one thought only, such as a sweeping statement that all cats are the same, it is either careless or insane, since all cats are not the same. Even two cats who look, act, and sound alike, one could say cats are pretty much the same, and still be dealing with rather irrational thought. Or one could recognize that there was a species, Felix domesticus, but that within it cats were decidedly different, not only from breed to breed, but cat to cat. That would be rationality, not because one used Latin, but because he could tell the difference amongst cats. The fear of cats has as its source an engram, which usually does not include more than one cat, and that is a very specific cat of a specific breed with a certain or perhaps uncertain personality. Okay. The pre-clear, who is afraid of all cats, is actually afraid of one cat, and a cat which is most likely dead these many years at that. Thus, as we swing from complete rationality down to irrationality, there is a narrowing of differences until they nearly vanish and become similarities and identities. Oh, I'm scrolling. Okay. Aristotle's syllogism, not sure if I'm saying that, syllogism, in which two things equal to the same thing are equal to each other, simply does not begin to work in logic. Where does two things equal to the same thing are equal to each other? Okay. Logic is not arithmetic, which is an artificial thing man invented and which works. To handle a problem in logic, the mind flutters through an enormous mass of data and computes with dozens and even hundreds of variables. It does not, and never did, think on the basis that two things equal to the same thing are equal to each other, except when employing mathematics. It had conceived the better to resolve abstract problems. It is an abstract truth that 2 and 2 equal 4. 2 what and 2 what equal 4. There is no scale made, no yardstick or caliper or microscope manufactured which would justify the actuality. For instance, that 2 apples plus 2 apples equal 4 apples. 2 apples and 2 apples are 4 apples. Now, if they are the same apples, they would not equal 4 other apples by any growth or manufacturing process ever imagined. Okay. Where was I? I feel like, is he trying to change math now? It's not. I'm just, sometimes some of the stuff he. Infinity makes sense to me. Sounds like laying the foundation of normalized abuse. Could be. Oh, that's fine. Okay, Indigo. An example of thinking in identities is thinking that all men are. Okay. Reactive mind is your subconscious, basically. Yes, it definitely is. So when he says analytical mind, he just means your regular brain. And when he says reactive mind, he means your subconscious. This is where he's clearly ripping off general semantics. I don't even know what that means, but I will take your word for it. Do apples have to identify as apples? What if one is Granny Smith and one is Red Delicious? Yeah. There's a parallel with id, subconscious, reactive, and ego. He calls it the I, and I believe we would call it the ego. Mind that reacts with the outer world. For someone who hates psychology, he certainly hijacked it on a massive scale. He definitely did. But yeah. There have been, you guys weren't reading along with me, but anytime he said the I, it was in quotation marks. So, all right, let's keep going. Okay. Man is content to take approximations and call them loosely exactitudes. There is no absolute anything save in abstract terms set up by the mind to work out exterior problems and achieve approximations. This may seem to be a stretched conception, but it is not. The mathematician is very well aware that he is working with digit and analog approximations set up into systems which were not necessarily here before man came and will not necessarily be here after he is gone. Logic, even the simple logic of wondering about the wisdom of going shopping at 10, is handling numerous variables, indefinites, and approximations. Mathematics can be invented by the carload lot. There is no actual absolute. There is only a near approach. Our grammarians alone, much behind the times, insist probably in memory of the metaphysician, and absolute reality and truth. I'm glad you guys are reading with me, because if I get that wrong, you still know what I mean. That was a hard one. This is here set down partly because it may be of interest to some, but mainly because the auditor must realize that he has an accurate measuring stick for sanity. I'm not so sure about that. I'm going to stop right there for a second. I can see why there were Dianetic centers or Dianetic courses, because you were in a room with somebody that could explain this better. Because just reading it alone, I get very lost sometimes. All right, we'll go back to next sentence. Sanity is the ability to tell differences. The better one can tell differences, no matter how minute, and know the width of those differences, the more rational he is. The less one can tell differences, and the closer one comes to thinking in identities, A equals A, the less sane he is. Okay, I'm going to scroll. A man says, I don't like dogs. Spot it, auditor, he has an engram about 1 or 2 dogs. A girl says, all men are alike. Spot it, auditor, here's a real aberree. Mountains are so terrible. Jewelers never go any place. I hate women. Spot them. Those are engrams right out in broad daylight. Those engrams which inhibit the analytical mind in differentiating are those engrams which most seriously inhibit thinking. You can't tell the difference is a common engram. There is no difference. Nothing will ever make any difference to me again. People are all bad. Everybody hates me. This is insanity bait, as the auditor says, and puts a man spin bin bound. There is another class of identity thought, and that is the group which destroys time differentiation. You don't know when it happened is a classic phrase. I don't know how late it is, and others have a peculiar effect on the mind, for the mind is running on a precision chronometer of its own, and the engrams can thoroughly misread the dial. On a conscious level, one goes along fairly well on analytical time. The engrams slide around back and forth according to when they are keyed in or restimulated. An engram may underlie today's action, which belonged 40 years ago on the time track and should be back there. It is not remarks about time difference so much that aberrate, it is the untimed character of engrams. Okay, I'm going to scroll. Time is the great charlatan. It heals nothing. It only changes the environmental aspects and a man's associates. The engram of 10 years ago, with all its painful emotion, may be insisted and forgotten, but it is right there, ready to force action if restimulated today. The reactive mind runs on a dime store wristwatch. The analytical mind runs on a battery of counter-checking chronometers, of which a liner could be proud. The cells think that wristwatch is a pretty fair gimmick, and it was back there in the days when man's ancestor was washed in by the waves and managed to cling to the sand. Thus, a primary test for aberration is similarity and identity. The primary test for rationality is differentiation and the minuteness or largeness with which it can be done. Men are all alike, she says, and they are too, to her. Poor thing, like the fellow who assaulted her when she was a kid, like her detested father who said it. Okay, scrolling. Ugh. I do disagree to some of that just a little bit. A lot of times I say generalizations like that just for ease of conversation or to not ease of conversation. What I meant was to just to get through something in a conversation that I didn't want to get all technical about. I might be more stereotypical about something like that, or say all men are alike, because I don't want to get into something more specific. So that's just something that popped in my brain. Not everybody hates me because not everybody knows me. Philosophy and I don't mix. I often get the right answer, but the steps in between in the wrong order. Yeah, I get that. Speaking of an aberry, there was an anti-Scientology satire newsletter from the 50s called The Aberry. Is that real? How had I not heard about that yet? That's cool. Let me get a drink. Whew. Ugh. All right. Let's move on. All right. Relative importances and believe and can't believe. This should be interesting. The auditor will find himself confronted with two arch enemies in "you must believe it" and "I can't believe." The mind has its own equilibrium and ability, and it is aided no more by engrams than an adding machine is aided by a held down 7. One of the most important functions of the mind is the computing of the relative importances of data. In discovering and conducting research on Dianetics, for instance, there were billions of data about the mind accumulated throughout the last few thousand years. Scrolling. Now, with a 6-foot rear vision mirror, we can look back and see that here and there, people had expressed opinions or turned up unevaluated facts, which are now data in some of the axioms of Dianetics or parts of its discoveries. I need to look at that sentence again. I look back and see that here and there, people expressed opinions or turned up unevaluated facts, which are now data in Dianetics or parts of its discovery. Okay, maybe he'll explain this more. All right. These facts existed in the past. Some exist now in Dianetics, but with a tremendous difference. They are evaluated. Oh. Evaluation of the data for its importance was vital before the information was of value. Dr. Sententius might have written in 1200 AD that he believed actual demons did not exist in the mind. Goodwife Sophie in 1782 was heard to say that she was certain that prenatal influence had warped many a life. Is that who he got a lot of this from? I gotta write. I'm writing her name. I'm writing that name down. I want to check it out. I'd be curious if that's where he got some of this stuff. If that's a thing. 1782. Dr. Zamla. 1840. Okay. I just wanted to write that down. Okay. life. Dr. Zamba might have written in 1846 that a hypnotized patient could be told he was crazy and that he would thereafter act crazy. Dr. Sententious might have said also that angels, not demons, caused mental illness because the patient had been evil. Goodwife Sophie also might have said the punk water poultices cured ravings. Dr. Zamba might also have declared that hypnotized patients needed only a few more positive suggestions to make them well and strong. In short, for every datum which approached truth, there were billions which were untrue. The missing part of each datum was a scientific evaluation of its importance to the solution. The selection of a few special drops of water from an ocean of unspecial drops is impossible. The problem of discovering true data could be resolved only by jettisoning all former evaluations of humanity and the human mind and all facts and opinions of whatever kind and starting fresh, evolving the entire science from a new highest common denominator. And it is true that Dianetics borrowed nothing, but was first discovered and organized. Only after the organization was completed and a technique evolved was it compared to existing information. So, okay. So what I'm getting here is he's talking about these other theories, whatever they are, and that I'm getting the idea that he's saying they don't work or they're untrue or they weren't evaluated, but Dianetics was. We know that literally Dianetics could be put in that same category, but he makes it sound like, this is something that had been studied for a really long time, when really all it is he took things from all of these places and he used them in creating the Dianetics. He made up a religion, so why not? Exactly. Let me go back. All the issues of the Abery are online. I'm going to check that out, Adam, and write that in the notes too. The Abery. It's a good title. I wonder if he making up names or were these real medical professionals. Let me check. Let me check. I'm curious too. This is kind of why we're reading this, to not just to get done reading it, but to see why and how he did things. So, let's look up this good wife Sophie. I'm curious if this is just the name he used. Okay. Nothing comes up on Google. That show, The Good Wife, is coming up. All right, let me go. Dr. Sententious. Dr. Sententia. No. I'm not. At least not on Google. Dr. Zamba. I mean, these could be just something that we don't have anymore. That maybe he knew. Because these are pretty remote. Let me put in that year. Dr. Zamba. Oh, there's 1846. That might be why we're not finding them. It might be too old. No. Dr. Zamba, 1846. No, I'm not finding really anything. So I don't know if he's making this up or it's just not something that's widely used. So I didn't find anything right away. So, all right. Let's keep going. Where were we? Oh, I was done with the whole paragraph. I'm going to scroll. Okay. The point here is that monotone importance in a class of facts leads to nothing but the most cluttered confusion. That's kind of what I feel right now. Just saying. Here is evaluation. Opinions are nothing. Authority is useless. Data is secondary. Establishment of relative importance is the key. Given the world and the stars as a laboratory and a mind to compute the relative importance of what it perceives, and no problems can remain unsolved. Given masses of data with monotone evaluation, and one has something which may be pretty but is useful. The stunned look of fresh-caught ensigns of the Navy when they first see in the metal the things about which they have so laboriously read is a testimony to more than the faulty educational system currently employed. Did I read that right? The system seeks to train something which is perfect, the memory. It aligns little or nothing with purpose or use, and ignores the necessity of personal evaluation of all data, both as to need for it and its use. The stunned look comes from the overwhelming recognition that whereas they have thousands of data about what they see, they do not know whether it is more important to read the chronometer when they take a sextant sight or use only blue ink in writing a logbook. These gentlemen have been wronged educationally, not because they have not been given thousands of data relative to ships, but because they have not been told the relative importance of each datum and have not experienced that importance. They know more facts than the less educated, but they know less about factual relation. Okay, I kind of get what he's saying there. Scrolling. More pertinent to the auditor, there are two species of engrammic commands which give monotone evaluation to data. The persons who have either of these as a major content in the engram bank will be similarly aberrated even if each manifests the aberration with opposite polarity. Every now and then, some unfortunate auditor finds a can't believe it on his hands. This case is extremely trying. Under this heading come the I doubt it, the I can't be sure, and the I don't know cases. Scrolling. All right. Such a case is easy to spot, for when he first comes into therapy, he begins by doubting Dianetics, the auditor, himself, the furniture, and his. Oh, gosh. The chronic doubter is not an easy case because he cannot believe his own data. The analyzer has a built-in judge which takes in data, weighs it, and judges it right, wrong, or maybe. The engrammic doubter has a held down 7 to the effect that he has to doubt everything, something much different from judging. He is challenged to doubt. He must doubt. If to doubt is divine, then the God is certainly Moloch. He doubts without inspecting. He inspects the most precise evidence, and he still doubts. I think those are called skeptics. The auditor will return this patient to a somatic which tears half his head off, which is confirmed by scars, which is confirmed by aberration, and which is doubted as an incident. Just sometimes the word that he uses to describe things is, I think, makes it more complicated than it really needs to be. If he would just, if he wouldn't have, he thinks he has to explain everything in such minute detail. All right. The way to handle this case is to take his pat phrases and feed them to him in reverie, which is also hypnosis. In reverie or out of reverie with repeater technique. Make him go over and over them, sending his somatic strip back to them. Shortly, a release of the phrase will take place. Feed all doubter phrases which the patient has used in this manner. Then continue the case. The object is not to make him a believer, but to place him in a situation where he can evaluate his own data. Don't argue with him about Dianetics. Arguing against engrams is senseless since the engrams themselves are senseless. Okay, scrolling. In 10 or 20 hours of therapy, such a patient will begin to face reality enough so that he no longer doubts the sun shines, doubts the auditor, or doubts that he had a past of some sort. He is only difficult because he requires these extra hours of work. He is usually, by the way, very aberrated. The can't believe it finds difficulty in evaluation because he has difficulty giving credence to any fact more than any other fact. This produces an inability to compute relative importances among data, with the result that he may be as concerned with the shade of his superior's tie as with the marriage he himself is about to undertake. Similarly, the "you must believe it" case finds difficulty in differentiating amongst importances of various data and may hold equally firmly the idea that paper is made from trees and that he is about to be fired. Both cases worry, which is to say they are unable to compute well. Rational computation depends upon the personal computation of the relative importances of various data. Reactive computation deals exclusively with the equation that widely different objects or events are similar or equal. The former is sanity, the latter is insanity. I'm scrolling. Well, then I've got loads of insanity because I do that a lot. The must believe it case will present a confused reactive bank, for the bank embraces the most unlikely differences as close similarities. The must believe it engram command can dictate that one person, a class of persons, or everyone must be believed no matter what is written or said. The auditor returning the patient will find major aberrations held in place by a lock containing only conversation. When father is the actual source and is an ally of the patient, the auditor will discover that almost everything father said was accepted literally and unquestioningly by his child. The father may not have been aware of having established this must believe it condition, and he may even be a jocular man given to jokes. Every joke will be found to be literally accepted unless the father carefully labeled it as a joke, which meant it must not be literally accepted. One case folder is to hand here where father was the source of must believe. One day the father took his daughter, 3 years of age, down to the seacoast and through the fog pointed to a lighthouse. The lighthouse gave an eerie aspect in the foggy night. "That's Mr. Billingsley's place," said the father, meaning that Billingsley, the lighthouse keeper, lived there. The child nodded faithfully, if a little frightened, for Mr. Billingsley threw around a mane of hair shadows, glared to seaward with one eye sweeping the water, and stood 100 feet tall. and Mr. Billingsley let out moans which sounded quite ferocious. His place was a ledge of rock. As a pre-clear 20 years later, the daughter was discovered to be frightened of any low moaning sound. The auditor patiently traced down the source and found, much to the delight of scrolling, himself and the daughter, Mr. Billingsley. Vast quantities of aberration, peculiar conceptions, and strange notions were found to derive from casual statements the father had made. Being skilled in his task, the auditor did not bother to try to locate and erase everything the father had said, a task which would have taken years and years. He located instead the prenatal "you must believe me" and its engrammic locks, and all the non-engrammic locks, of course, disappeared and were automatically reevaluated as experienced data rather than held down sevens. Of course, there is always much more wrong with the case than a mere "you must believe me," but the change of viewpoint which the patient experienced immediately afterwards was startling. She was now at liberty to evaluate her father's data, which she had not been before. Because they teach in terms of altitude and authority, educational institutions themselves form a social "you must believe it" aberration. It is impossible to reduce an entire university education, even if it sometimes appears desirable, but by addressing the moments when the patient was hammered into believing or accepting school from kindergarten forward, many a fat clogged mind can again be made facile, which was not so before, for the facts will be reevaluated automatically by the scrolling. By altitude is meant a difference of level of prestige. Okay, so I'm going to say, they can't believe it is a subject so weary. Oh, there was more to that sentence, sorry. Will be re-evaluated automatically by the mind for importances not accepted on monotone evaluation, as is the case in formal education. The "can't believe it" is a subject so weary and dreary to the auditor that he may find himself, after a few finished cases, running adroitly away from one. The "I don't know" and the "I can't be sure" cases are not as bad as the "I can't believe it." The prize case in difficulty in Dianetics is a patient who is a junior, named after either father or mother, who has not only shut down pain, emotion, visio, and sonic recall, but also dub-in for them on a false basis, with a lie factory working full blast, who is uncooperative and who is a "can't believe it." Holy moly, that's a lot. If that's all in one case. All right. Monotone evaluation hinders the "can't believe it's" acceptance of all facts. Any case may have a few "can't believe it's," but some cases are so thoroughly aberrated by the phrase that they disbelieve not only reality, but also their own existence. Okay, scrolling. Check the... I'm just looking at the chat real quick. All right. I'll make sure I pop myself on the screen. I'm glad I read that, because I was just going to talk. Yeah. Well, that's perfectly fine. I understand. I just want to make sure. Oh, hey, Becky. Dr. Sententious sounds like a placeholder for an opinionated person. I know, right? I have a feeling he made some of that stuff up too. And I struggled to get through it, but I had all this pressure put on me and made me out as if there was something wrong with me. Of course, AA, that's the point, kind of. If they could fix you guys like that, they wouldn't, you know. It seems to me like the whole framework of Scientology and Dianetics is around the auditing. That's like the whole point of going, doing this stuff. Yeah, I'm sorry you had to go through that too. Dianetics is basically the world's longest run-on sentence. Now you guys see what I've been reading, because you'll hear me hesitate because I think I'm coming to the end of a sentence and it keeps going. It's a comma. Yeah, Becky, AA's been great in explaining things to us. So it's been really awesome having an ex-member in here with us. Yeah. It's helped a lot because a lot of times I've said before, Becky, without AA here, with somebody that was on the other side, I had a track. I was reading things and thinking one way because I'm a never in, and I already know the end result of this stuff. But hearing from a former member what they went through changed my, whole thought process on certain things. So you're a glutton for punishment. Well, having you guys here helps a great deal. If I'd have been left to my own devices to do this by myself, I wouldn't have finished. There's no way. There's no way I'd do it. You're welcome, A. Well, you need more thanks because you had to go through this in order to give us that information. So I appreciate that. All right, let's keep going. So we're at an hour. I try not to go past an hour and a half. So if we get to a good stopping point in about 15-20 minutes, then that's probably where we'll end it. All right. Let's get back over here. All right. Let me get another drink of water. Man, I'll be fine, but as soon as I start reading, I get dry mouth. All right. The mind has a built-in doubter, which, unhindered by engrams, rapidly sorts out importances and by their weight resolves problems and arrives at conclusions. The rational mind applies itself to data presented, compares it to experience, evaluates its veracity, and then assigns it relative importance in the scheme of things. This is done by a clear with a rapidity which sometimes requires the splitting of seconds. By a normal, the time required is extremely variable, and the conclusions are more apt to be referred to another's opinion or compared to authority rather than to personal experience. That is the fundamental effect of contemporary education, which, through no particular fault of its own, and despite every effort it has made to free itself, yet through lack of tools is forced to follow scholastic methods. These, by contagion of aberration, persist against all efforts of advanced educators. The normal is taught on one hand to believe or else he'll fail, and on the other to disbelieve as a scientific necessity. Belief and disbelief cannot be taught, they must be personally computed. If a mind could be likened to a general served by his own staff, it could be seen to have a G2, which, as a combat intelligence center, collects facts, weighed them for importance, and formed an estimate of a situation or the value of a conclusion. As the intelligence officer would fail if he had a signed order to disbelieve everything, so does the mind fail, which has a reactive mind, to disbelieve. Certainly, a military organization would lose to every puny enemy if it had, conversely, a command to believe everything, and a man will fail if he has a reactive mind, order to believe all information in the world around him, in your subconscious there. So, I just wanted to say something to Becky. I know you haven't been here like the whole time, so I just wanted to mention this part has gotten really tedious, but there have been other chapters, honestly, the first half where he was setting everything up, that got to be, there were some that were pretty interesting. And what I'm going to try to do is go and find those really good parts where we were getting into, really got somewhere in understanding or talking with each other. I'm going to see if I can pull those out for people that don't want to sit here through every word. So I just wanted to put that in there. I'm going to scroll for people that came in late. There was a couple of really good ones we read. All right. Oh, did I take me off? Nope. Okay, here we go. The believe and disbelieve engrams present different manifestations, and while one cannot be said to be either more or less aberrative than the other, it is certain that the disbelieve engram, by and large, seems to make the less sociable man. Disbelief occurs in various degrees, of course. There is, for instance, a social disbelief engram which promotes a class of literature which is as insincere as it is unwitty. Insincerity, shame of emotional demonstration, fear of praising may stem from other things than merely a disbelief engram. But a disbelief engram is most certainly present in the majority of such cases. The auditor will find, when he is trying to enter a very strong can't believe it case, that experience is disbelieved, the auditor is disbelieved, hope of results is disbelieved, and that the most ridiculous and unreasonable insults and arguments may be presented. The patient may squirm in a veritable snake pit of somatics and still disbelieve that he is re-experiencing anything. It is sadly chronic fact that an aberree has a certain set of cliches from out of his engram bank. He will repeat these cliches for all occasions and circumstances. Mother, having an engram bank of her own, and father, having his, will be found to be uttering pretty much the same sort of statement time after time. I'm going to scroll. These are dramatizations. One of the parents may have had an I don't know ready to precede everything he or she said, which makes a whole stack of I don't knows in the engram bank, which much undermines understanding. In the same way, you must believe or you can't believe may become stacked in the engram bank. Once one has heard a few engrams from a patient, he knows he will have many, many more similar engrams from that source. Once an auditor has listened to the personnel in the patient's engram bank for a very short time, he knows pretty much what he will have in many, many more engrams. Hence, any phrase is liable to be much repeated in the engram bank, with varying somatics and accompanying perceptics. If mother is troubled with high blood pressure, it is raised by father to the intense discomfort of the child in a degree which often produces a later migraine headache. She is apt to utter, I can't believe you would treat me this way. Privately, she must have been hard to convince. One doesn't convince much against engramic reasoning, for he treated her this way about every 3 days, and every 3 days she was saying, I can't believe you, or I can't believe you would do this to me, or I can't believe anything you say, or some such thing. The can't believe is apt to be rather hostile, since can't believe is often hostile conversation. You've got to believe me is more apt to be a pleading or whining sort of enneagram. Believe what I tell you, Diet, is, however, fully as hostile as an auditor might expect. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Becky. And if you have any questions, just say. The basic things is, I think you were here for the reactive versus analytical. And when we say reverie, we really mean hypnotism. But he says there's no hypnosis in Scientology or Dianetics, but he laid it out at the beginning of Dianetics. That is exactly what he was doing. And engrams are just trauma. Only he thinks we can have trauma all the way back to conception, and that most of our engrams are prenatal. That is the basis for pretty much all of it. That's why he was talking about, the stuff he was hearing is in that paragraph right there, where he was saying the high blood pressure was discomforting to the child, because he's talking about the child was still in the womb when that happened. He talks about that a lot. I have started using biotin. Yep. Did you hear? There's mine. Or This is called biotin, or maybe it's biotin. But yes, this stuff is amazing, because my pain meds give me dry mouth. It's an enzyme. It's not a moisturizer, and it works. Literally, a couple sprays works around. It's great. It's tough to understand these words in this order. I may not have studied any language, but I know what manipulation is. My heart goes out to those who had to endure this. AA. I'm not getting it all either, AA. I'm just... Now, if I can understand a little bit of it, pretty much all he's doing right now, he's laid out Dianetics. And, yeah, he's laid out kind of the basics in the first part of the book. And now he's really doing now is just going... it's really into the auditing part, and he's just really going over what auditors should know and how they should do things. So I kind of feel like if we don't get this, it's not that big a deal, because we kind of got the main points of, when he was setting it all up. And, we talked about that quite a bit. And so, I mean, we honestly could probably skip some of this. Because he's really just going through examples of cases, what auditors should do, and he has to over explain everything. Hey, Carrie Ann. What time do you go on today, Carrie Ann? Do you do the book thing today? When I speak with people, I try to translate Scientology. Audit equals confession. Yeah, well, he's actually, funny enough, he's calling it therapy in Dianetics, when we know he hates psychology, because the chapter we're in is Mechanisms and Aspects of Therapy, Part 2. So I that's a good way. I would say confession / therapy. It's kind of both in a lot of ways. At 6, okay. I haven't read those chapters yet. I'm going to try to read them before I come on at 6. The book is meant to make people feel stupid and lost. I think that's part of it too. Because remember, at the time that this came out, he opened up Dianetics centers all over the place. And so I think he made it just, confusing enough that you felt you needed to sit in the class, go to the center, because there's a workbook that goes with this. Then there's DVDs. I almost got the workbook, but I was like, I spent less than $10 on the paperback, and I didn't want to spend any more. So, and then you feel like Hubbard must be the genius and you the idiot. It's invalidating. And that's exactly the point, AA. He is the source. He knows everything, and only he can help. That is the whole basis of all of it. So, I mean, you're feeling the exact way that you're supposed to. And I spoke with a Scientologist on Friday, and he said Scientology encourages therapy. Oh. They will say anything to get people. They encourage the money. Yeah, think about how many hours he said earlier. He said something like 20 hours. I don't know. Last I heard, it was like $300 an hour for auditing or something. What gets me is the self-auditing. I wouldn't begin to understand how to do self-auditing. I mean, I can barely meditate and pray because my brain works so fast. I'll be in the middle of prayer and like go off on my mind will just go somewhere else. And I hate it. I have to do stuff out loud. That's why I'm a talker in order to stay focused. If you watch Hubbard's World in Action interview, you can really see how meandering and inarticulate he was. Oh, I totally get that in this book. Right. Hold on. Let me get that. Yes. We also saw somebody go in and secretly record and what did they say? It was something about Christians. I can't remember what that was. Was it on Natalie's channel? Oh, what did she say? Something about Christian. I can't remember. But they always tell you can be Christian too and be in this. But there's no way you could be both. But yeah, I think that's another thing I wonder, especially people that are in the orgs at the front door when new people come in, are they really encouraged to say whatever they need to say, or do they come up with that on their own? Are they told what not to say to non-Scientologists that they're trying to get interested? Is there like I assume they've gone to training. So they've gone to training to recruit, right? Real therapy is bad, auditing is good, right? There is a link on my channel now for book club tonight at 6. Don't worry if you haven't read the chapters. We will discuss and catch you up. Yeah, I'll try to read them between now and then. It's just 2 chapters. I'm a pretty fast reader. Pizza, exactly. I asked him if the courses were expensive, and he said some were. In my opinion, he's a recent member. He's Muslim and said all religions were welcome. Well, that's because they do welcome, the Nation of Islam and is part of the church. Okay, thanks for the link. Scientologists are told not to speak about Scientology, just supposed to offer a book for them to learn themselves. Yeah, I've heard that too. Because we even saw, what was her name? She passed away. She was a Scientologist. Kirsten Alley. She was on that some reality show, and they said, "Well, what is it about?" She's like, "You have to read a book." Where if you talk to any Christian like myself, if somebody asks, I don't push my beliefs on anybody, but if they want to know, you've heard me talk on the street. I'm in there with all the this and this, and I love church and Jesus, and I'm telling them everything, and that to me is, very telling in a lot of ways. But I think we only see it more because I don't want to invalidate AA because she was, if you haven't been here before when I've said this, there are a lot of this book that if I would have been in need and wasn't getting the mental health help that I needed, would have sounded great. I would have been like, wow, this sounds kind of good, Kirstie Alley, that's right. couldn't remember her first name. So it's only until he goes to the bazaar. I mean, I don't know how many times he literally, guys, I know a couple of you weren't here for this. He said the worst case he saw was 80 unalive attempts of her pregnancy, so that all of our trauma or engrams are caused prenatally by what our parents did or what our mother did while we were in the womb. Oh, he knew you were recording. Oh. And I think, I mean, I get how, because AA said, and I've had a couple other people in here that said some of it did help them get rid of some trauma because, and I get that, I can see how that would work because he is paralleling real therapy. He knows about real psychology and therapy, and he used that as a template, but then added all this other stuff to it. So I could see in the releasing of engrams or releasing of trauma, it helping people feel better. We need to hold up pictures of W.D. Fard, the man regarded by the NOI as God incarnate. Oh, really? With words every time you get auditing. Oh, Master Fard weeps. I took to it because I was suffering from being in the closet, and the therapy I had in the past was harmful, so I did not trust therapists. Yeah, it was perfect for you. And then if you go back farther, this book was written in the early 50s, and you look at what mental health was like then and the options that you had, really, I think only people with a lot of money got good therapy, and then the rest, you went to an asylum, which was horrible. So I could see easily how, people would pick this book up and be like, well, that sounds, like something I could, what might help me. And it may have helped in a lot of ways. It's just we know that LRH was a sociopath. I always get that word wrong, but narcissistic, whatever. He added his own mess to it. If he had not done that, and I've said this many times, if he had not done that and left it Dianetics, left it the way it is, he probably could have helped a lot of people and done good. But that's not what he was about. Absolutely, there are similarities between trauma work and what L. Ron teaches. But the effing around with people's trauma is kind of dangerous, and there wasn't much back in the day, like you say. Yes, definitely. In the 50s, the poor got asylums and the rich got Milltown. Yeah, I don't know what Milltown is, but I can figure it out. I've had bad therapists too. Had horrible therapists in the past that made me feel guilty. Have a great therapist now. I just had therapists that didn't do their job. That just sat there or fell asleep on me. So actually, the time I got the most help was in 2013, because after I got sick, it messes with your brain when you can't be active like you were. So I was in there for about 8 days. I stayed 2 days longer than I needed to. It was the most peaceful week I've ever had, because I couldn't do anything like that when the kids were young, and my husband was overseas all the time. I had to keep everything held down. And finally, I had an opportunity, I needed to go. And I even stayed 2 extra days to make sure the meds were working. And it was so peaceful. The second time I went in the hospital, I went to a different one, and it sucked. We were cattle. They just wanted to make money off us and didn't help me at all. So, I mean, even now, even with as open as mental health care is right now, we still have, mental hospitals that aren't doing their job. We still have therapists that aren't doing their job or correctly. Yeah, that's true. That is true. You know who I think would probably be the best therapist? because I had wanted to go into psychology. I actually wanted to go more into research, but are people who have probably had mental health problems themselves and understand. I think people who haven't been to a therapist that go into psychology, I think they're missing something, an understanding, I think, in a lot of ways. But yeah, and so what would happen, I would get a sucky therapist. I had like 3. The only therapist that ever actually helped me, I've told you guys before, was the last one. I saw her 3 times and she moved. That's the thing about a military town. You find somebody, you find a good hairstylist, you find a good doctor, and then they move. So, but yeah, I had one that would fall asleep on me because I'd go late in the day. I was just like, and to be honest, if they weren't giving me coping skills, talking about stuff, as you can tell, I have no problem talking. I could talk to anybody. I needed somebody to teach me coping skills, and that's what I finally got in the hospital that I wasn't getting from the therapist. So it did help me quite a bit. Not completely. That's okay. Oh, you mean me? I forgot what I just said. I thought you said. Yeah, so I would go more than every time. So I would go like between around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, like his last appointment. And literally, and he was a little older. And he thought after about 4 or 5 times of this, I quit. Yeah. Students to participate in therapy, I think she fell asleep. Yeah, it was a dude. Most of them were. Then the guy after him said, so then I would have a big long no therapy year or 2, and then I'd go try it again. This dude, I would be in the middle of talking, and he would stop me, and he had a microphone, and he would read his notes into the computer with Dragon Speak, talking about me and what I just talked about. Patient says, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just sitting there like, so he's taking up half of my session to make his notes. I think I went there 3 times and I quit. So yeah. The reason I'm having this discussion, I honestly don't want to read on any much more. I'm going to go through this chapter. Because I'm looking at it, and like I said, it's more teaching auditors how to do their job. I'm going to go through it, and because before I said it was really hard to leave things out because he would talk about it later, but we're getting towards the end of the book. I think I could leave some things out, like all these descriptions of hard cases and things like that, unless you guys really want to hear them. But like I said, I've now got this printout on my community page. If you guys think that's a good idea, I do. If it's not something I think is completely necessary for Never Ends to know, I think I'm going to try to go in, because this is a 102-page chapter of part 2 therapy. So, oh, David, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're a sponsor for one of my trips. That's awesome. Rewards for staying. That's a good reward, David. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I've pretty much said that after YouTube takes their portion, that covers my gas and a little bit of my parking. So that pretty much sponsors one of my trips. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to keep reading here unless you guys want me to. I have my moments. Well, we appreciate your moments. Oh, you guys were talking back here. Dragon is a voice to note program that doctors use instead. Oh, somebody asked what that was. Let me go back here. Oh, I had a therapist that said I didn't need therapy, but she loved that I made her laugh. What I deal with my trauma through dark comedy. A lot of us do. Let me go back here. We have come so far with ethics and putting things in place like HIPAA to keep people safe. Yes. So I mean, we've made a lot of strides since the 50s. And it's the last, I'll even say only the last, not even the last 10 years. Because when my husband retired in 2010, PTSD wasn't looked at the same as it is now. Back in 2007, 2008, when he got back, I went to his unit twice begging for them to get him help. He came home a completely different guy. I've known him since he was 15, 16. And I'm like, look, something's wrong. And they did nothing. And yet, just think about what people will be saying about the treatments we don't have now that they'll have in 70 years. We've come far. I know, that's true. That's true. Oh, I'm surprised she did not point it out as a potential defense mechanism. Yeah. Let me get where's my mouse? There it is. Yeah, that's awesome. EFT tapping. That is what my last therapist taught me. I haven't actually used it though. Yes. Right before her that last therapist, she was the one that was teaching me that. And I was at the dentist recently, and I don't get tense at the dentist. I don't like to be stuck with the needle. He was doing the needle, and the tech was tapping my shoulder. And I was like, thank you, it worked. Because I make noises to distract myself from pain, and that distracted me, and it worked. So, yeah, that's definitely, I would recommend anybody that, it's, I can't explain it because she only showed me once. But it was you tap a certain way, and, it helps you kind of, you could probably explain it better to me because she only told me about it once and then she moved. But I liked it because that kind of thing really does kind of distract me and help me concentrate. Like I was telling you how when I try to pray or meditate, I get lost in my brain. Well, this kind of in a way it helped me kind of concentrate and chill and not my mind race, like it normally does. Does that make sense, AA? That's what it did for me. Man, I'm getting hot in here. It's supposed to be getting cold because I'm talking. I think I had a hot flash there. So I liked it. I need to get more into it. And I need to go read up on it because I can't remember everything she taught. I think she even gave me a printout. I don't know where it went. So she was the first one to give me a coping skill where everybody other therapist was just like, oh, how does that make you feel? I'm like, I know how it makes me feel. That I don't have a problem with. What I need is to understand how to deal with it. And I never had anybody help me with that except her. Oh, my husband and my son have ADD. Yeah. Yeah, Becky, that's similar, yeah. Yeah, it helps you concentrate. But she had me tap in like certain places, but I'm sure you could do it anywhere yeah. Yes, in a certain sequence. Yes, while repeating a phrase. See, I forgot that part. Like, even though I'm feeling angry right now, I still, yeah, something like, yeah. It's been many years since she showed me that. Not, hey, whatever works. But yeah, and so that was like I said, meditation doesn't work for me. Although I did it anyway. It was nice to sit still. Me and my daughter were doing it when she was in school. We'd light candles, we'd sit, and we had a phrase that we would repeat. That's the only way I could really meditate. If I just tried to be quiet, my mind won't slow down enough. Hey, that works too. I think for everybody, if you can find something that works for you, that's awesome. I was talking to my son a couple days ago, and he kind of irritated me. He just this last year got diagnosed, got with a therapist. He's 36. He'll be 37 soon. And I'm 55, and he's like, well, have you done this? He's like, well, you need to do this, and blah, 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 blah. And he was talking about because I'm loud. There's a whole thing about that I talked about last night. I'm not going to go into it, but I was like, I left the room irritated. And what I should have, because I was like, what I need to say to him, and I will at some point, is mental health is not a one size fits all. And that's what he was trying to do. I'm like, first of all, I've been in therapy a lot longer, and our lives are completely different. I said, I have been through way more than he ever has, and in way different situations. A lot that he doesn't even know. So that was my final thought, that he needs to understand. He was trying to push this idea on me that was helping him isn't necessarily going to help me. And that's why, everybody's going to have to find their own path that works for them. Yeah. Here's a balloon. Go play. I can be like that kid in the movie. But yeah. This was in the 70s. My dad had a second grade education, but that one was Smart and My Hero. That is pretty smart from then. Yeah. In these times does not work. A lot of pent up emotion. This is meditation called Osho dynamic meditation. I haven't done a lot of study on meditation. I actually had a book on Christian meditation that I was using. Now that you guys helped me bring that, I wasn't actually thinking about it. I really do need to go back and figure out that tapping method, because I did like it. You shake, then dance, then lie still. But yeah, like I said, there's a lot of parallels. We know that when I did that, I did a quick background on him, not a very, I wasn't a deep dive. And there was 2 years where he supposedly studied under these two doctors at a mental hospital. Now, I don't believe for a minute that he spent 2 years in a mental hospital studying. I actually wonder if he wasn't a patient, because he came away knowing an awful lot about psychology, or if he even studied under them at all. 99 left balloons. I remember that. The dervishes practice moving meditation. Now, see, that would work for me. Moving meditation. The sitting still and trying to quiet. So hard to quiet my mind. And I was saying, at this point, being loud, I know when to be quiet in church and at work and things like that when I'm in a certain situation, but I have no filter. My brain is already on the next thought while I'm talking. It drives my husband crazy because I do interrupt a lot, but I can't help it. I have to really work when I'm talking with somebody. I really work at listening and not letting my brain try to run, which it does a lot. And I probably have the ADHD, but back in my day, it wasn't really. Let me get rid of the paper there. Oh yeah, that's the way I grew up. I was outside all the time. That's why living here has actually sucked. because for almost 31 years now, I don't go out in summer. It's too hot. And I really do think it had a lot to do with my mental health. And I didn't know about that at the time. I've only gotten really good at thinking about my mental health since the hospital. And I'm like, if we would have lived anywhere else where I could be outside all the time, I probably would have been a much happier, healthier person. So I think that had a lot to do with it. And then I went from working full time, teaching adult Sunday school, volunteering. I was still to bedridden overnight. And that's why I ended up in the hospital after about 3 years of that. The first year, they didn't even know what was wrong with me. All I knew it was I was weak. Oh, awesome. I know when I was going to the gym helps. Exercising, I know helps. And see, I didn't have that either if I wasn't going outside. I did used to go to the gym a lot more. A long time ago. Now I have literally no muscle mass left from being sedentary. So I said when it got cooled off, I was going to start going to the gym again. And I haven't. And I need to, because I really need to get stronger. I'm not going to get stronger unless I start lifting weights and getting these muscles. And I need to eat more protein. I got some good protein powder I can use. So I'm still a lot unhealthy in a lot of ways. So I take a lot of supplements and multivitamins because how's your body feeling now? I feel okay for the most part. My back's doing pretty good. I do have to be careful though when I sit here for this long. I feel fine right now. When I go to get up, my back's like, I have to give it a second and work my way up. Oh, I have low iron too, Becky. Oh, but yours is really bad. You're in anemia. See, I've been low iron my whole life since high school. I've never been able to give blood, but I'm not low enough to be anemic. So, like, I was cold a lot yesterday when it wasn't cold. Obviously, it was, and I've tried the iron supplements and they did not bring my iron up. I just had all the side effects. But yeah, I've lost all, I like this right here is because I have no muscle. I have no lean muscle in my body at all. I'm flab everywhere. And so even just a little bit of exercise, I need to do something. Because yeah, I go to Austin, I walk there and I walk back and I stand there, but that's not enough. I need to get my heart rate up and that kind of thing. My ferritin was at 3. I get iron infusions and it makes a huge difference. Oh, see, I've never been that low. I was low enough that I couldn't give blood, but I wasn't so low that I needed any kind of treatment. So I bruise like a peach. You probably do too. Do you by any chance eat ice, Becky? I'm just curious. I have an ice nugget machine and I drink ice water all day long and eat the ice. And I found out a few years ago that eating ice is a symptom of low iron. I'm like, oh, makes sense. I haven't always done it though. I really only started doing that a couple 2-3 years ago. All right, David, we're about to go off here too. It's been an hour and a half. But, well, I only read for an hour and a half, but I don't mind chatting for a few minutes. Let's see, what time is it? It's 4:30. I think I can read 2 chapters in an hour and a half. To get ready for. So, Carrie Ann is doing the Barefaced Messiah. Is that what it's called? And luckily, I have Kindle Unlimited because I have Kindle tablets, so I can have it for free. So I decided, and I'm wondering because the book we wanted to do after this is called A Piece of Blue Sky. I still think we should do it because Carrie Ann's doing that. That was a history of LRH through another member, but then so is A Piece of Blue Sky. But this guy that wrote that went from being a Scientologist to deprogramming people from cults. 12-ounce curls are doing wonders for my six-pack. I can almost rest my beer on my belly. No facts. Oh, are you on the West Coast, Carrie? I forgot that. Oh, that's even better. Gives me more time. Okay, that works good for me. The whirling dervishes spinning around. Oh, I missed this. No ice, but I crave chalk, so I eat Altoids. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that until after I was doing it. So, the hubby is alive. This is like the middle of the night for him. So, he's not looking too good. You okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm done reading. Like I said, I'm going to go through and see if I can eliminate some of this stuff. If it's just, him talking about different kinds of cases, unless you guys are interested in that, but like I said, if you really want to read the nitty-gritty of it, it's there. But the reason I didn't skip anything early on was every time I thought about skipping something, he ended up talking about it later. But what we're going through right now is kind of just him talking to people about talking to auditors about how to audit. And John Atack. Oh, he did work on Barefaced Messiah? So. Oh, that's fine, Irish. I always call you Irish. Should I call you Mark? I always do that when I just take the first part of somebody's name and make it short. I didn't know that. I didn't know John Atack worked on that too. Yeah. So Carrie Ann's reading Barefaced Messiah, and we're doing the first 2 chapters tonight. And then when we had all kind of talked about, after we're done with Dianetics, doing Piece of Blue Sky. So, okay. Bye, Becky. No bot. I'm going to go too. I appreciate you guys sticking around. It's been a definite ride, but I've learned a lot too. So I think because I did a really good deep dive there for a year with ex-members and their stories and learning about Scientology. But reading Dianetics, I think, gives you a whole new insight onto understanding why people are still got in, etc. So it's been really interesting. 3 and 4. Oh, I'm behind. Okay. Well, then you know what? I've got more time. It depends on how long they are. I might be able to read them all. If not, I'll just read 3 and 4 if it looks too long. So, all right. I'll see y'all later. Hopefully I'll see you later, Carrie Ann. And, if you weren't here last night, I now have our truck to myself. We got our second vehicle finally fixed. Been waiting on a part for 3 months. So now I don't have a time limit on when to be home. So if I go Friday night to graduation, I don't have to freak out about an exact time I have to leave. So it's a fast read. I'll probably be good then. No bot wants a refund. This instruction manual is gibberish. I don't blame you. I know. I have my own wheels. It'll be awesome. And he likes it too, because he has to take his stuff out when I go to Austin, because he has like a pistol belt with all the equipment on it, a badge, stuff he doesn't want to get stolen. So he puts it in the camper, then has to put it back in the car. Well, now he can just keep his stuff in his car. So it's nice. Yeah, me too. Yeah, they've had mine since October 1st. And we had to find the part. because the only part they could find was 600. The one we found was 300. So we saved $300. So, all right. Bye, y'all. Have a good week if I don't see ya.